Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover today, starting once again with a very significant update regarding the PSN outage. So the last time I talked to you guys, PSN was still down and people were really starting to wonder if something more significant was happening behind the scenes. But luckily, later in the day, yesterday, it did come back online, and a lot of people were obviously very relieved, but people were also wondering if Sony was going to talk to us about this and communicate anything, because the entire time it was down, it was just radio silence. And there were actually people saying that, look, Sony should actually give us some kind of compensation considering how long and drawn out the outage actually was. So, being reported by WCCF Tech, they say all PlayStation Plus members will receive compensation for the recent PlayStation Network outage. This is what Sony confirmed today. So, they actually put out a new message on X from Ask PlayStation, where they say network services have fully recovered from an operational issue. We apologize for the inconvenience and thank the community for their patience. All PlayStation Plus members will automatically receive an additional 5 days of service. So this is actually really nice to see Sony being transparent and communicating with the fan base and just kind of, letting everybody know that, listen, there's nothing to panic about. It was apparently some kind of operational issue. And on top of that, they are doing what I think is the right thing and offering some extra PlayStation Plus days to everybody's membership. This is actually something that I wasn't sure if Sony was going to do, and so I was kind of just waiting to see if they were going to respond. And so this is overall good news. It's good to see that PSN is back up. It's good to see that Sony's giving out some compensation, and so hopefully this is something that won't happen again, because it's extremely frustrating. But it is also worth noting here that Capcom has let everybody know that they are actually going to extend the Monster Hunter Wilds beta on PlayStation 5 for an extra 24 hours due to the outage, which is also great to see because, yeah, there were a lot of people trying to get some playtime in with the Monster Hunter beta. And they say here over on the X account, the Monster Hunter X account, PS5 hunters, thank you for your patience and understanding during this weekend's PSN service issues. To account for the reduced OBT2 playtime due to the outage, we are considering running OBT2 for an additional 24 hours at a future date. Exact details and timing are to be determined, so please stay tuned. So the important context here is that this is not going to be tacked on to the beta that's live right now. They're making it sound like it's something they're going to have to kind of announce and do on their own, where it's just like, here you go, the Monster Hunter beta is back for another 24 hours. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I'll keep you updated here on the channel. But we're going to move on to the next set of topics, which I think are very significant and honestly I think went completely overlooked this weekend due to the situation that was occurring with the PlayStation Network. So as most of you know, we have been covering the rumors regarding an upcoming state of play that is apparently set to happen this Friday, although it could be Thursday, it could come a little bit sooner, but nonetheless, there is apparently a state of play coming. And so we have Insider Gaming and Tom Henderson, who runs Insider Gaming, revealing some very interesting information, basically talking about something that is going to show up at the state of play, but also, interestingly enough, giving us new details on the next God of War game. So the first thing he did talk about was this next God of War game, and it was a little bit shaky. He seems like he's still trying to figure things out, but he basically said that from what he has heard from his sources, that the next God of War game is going to feature a young Kratos, and we're going back to Greece. So he didn't say whether or not this is going to be like a remaster, a prequel, or something along those lines. So it's worth keeping that in mind. It seems like he's still trying to get more information here, but he is claiming that that's what he's heard. Now, what makes this interesting is we have heard previous rumors that apparently there is some kind of God of War Greek Saga remaster collection. Don't know if this is going to be a thing or not. I don't want to get my hopes too high, but with this upcoming state of play and God of War's 20th anniversary happening on March 20th, does seem like something like this would be an easy home run for Sony. And so at the very least, we can walk away from this, with Tom Henderson, one of the industry's most reliable insiders, claiming that he has heard that the next God of War is going to feature young Kratos. I think the real question here is, are we looking at the next mainline God of War being some kind of prequel where we go back to younger Kratos and we're actually not going to continue where we left off after the God of War Valhalla DLC? Or is this maybe, some wires getting crossed and this young, going back to young Kratos that he's hearing of is actually referring to this rumored God of War Greek Saga collection? Either way, it is nice to get some information here. It does seem like they're absolutely, Sony that is, in Santa Monica, planning to do something with young Kratos once again. So if we hear anything more about God of War, I will be sure to keep you guys updated. But the next thing that we heard here has to do with the upcoming state of play and a game that is apparently going to be revealed here. This comes from another member of the Insider Gaming podcast, and he mentioned that he knows about an unheard of studio, an unknown studio with an unknown project that is actually going to be revealing their game for the first time at this upcoming state of play. And apparently he did see footage of this, but that's basically all he's saying, which is understandable. It seems like he doesn't want to spoil what the reveal is. He does not clarify, and this is the important part, he does not clarify if this is a PlayStation studio or a third-party studio. So, I don't want people walking away from this assuming that he's saying that there is an unknown PlayStation studio that is basically going to be announced at the state of play with an unknown game. He's just saying there's going to be a brand new game from a brand new studio, which is interesting, right? We do have to kind of wonder if this is going to be something that's going to be associated with Sony, with PlayStation. We do know, and this is where things get more interesting, we do know that Sony has multiple unannounced studios working on unannounced projects behind the scenes. I don't know how many people know about this, but there are at least 2 studios that Sony basically built in secret or put together in secret, and they have yet to announce anything officially. So could it be something relating to that? It's certainly plausible. But either way, I'm going to be very interested to see what this secret unannounced game is. It could be something very small. It could just be a small indie team and a small indie game. It could be a big team and a big AAA game. Could be something in between. Just keep your expectations in check. But this is what we're hearing, and it's coming from a solid source. So we'll see what happens. We're going to move on to the next topic, though, and this is something that started to make the rounds. It talks about Resistance 4 and how it was unsuccessfully pitched to Sony a while ago. And the most frustrating thing about seeing reports like this and the headlines and people reacting to it is the missing context. People assume that when they read a headline that says Resistance 4 was pitched to Sony and Sony said no, when people read those headlines, they're assuming that this happened like yesterday or last month or last year. The reality is this happened years ago. This happened back in 2012. But this was an interview that was conducted with Insomniac's founder and CEO, who's going to be retiring in March, Ted Price. The interview was conducted with Kinda Funny, and he says, Ted Price, that is, Resistance 4, we did pitch that one, and it was a wonderful concept. It's just that in terms of timing and market opportunity, it didn't work out. But it was the result of a lot of Insomniac team members being passionate about extending the story further. I do believe that Resistance has set up a really cool alternate history base where anything can happen with the Chimera and where they go and where their origins are. We spent a lot of time working on the backstory and kind of brainstorming on where we could take this in the future. And personally, I love this franchise. I was fortunate enough to be creative director for the first few Resistance games, and I will remember many, many moments, good and bad. When it comes to development, it taught us all a lot about how we could evaluate ourselves under some pretty heavy and some pretty difficult situations. Fortunately, we love the fan response, and we know that fans ask pretty regularly if we're going to do another Resistance. There's no answer to that, but I will say we pitched Resistance 4, and it was cool. And he was then asked a follow-up question as to whether or not a Resistance 4 could still happen at some point in the future. And he said, honestly, I hope so. I would love to see this story taken further. It's near and dear to my heart. There are so many cool things about it. Resistance 3 was intended to end that chapter of the franchise. With the way we ended with Capellion, closed a lot of loops on various smaller story items. We wanted to do that so that we would have more options in the future, whether we were to go ahead with more Resistance games or take another turn. When you work on a franchise for a long time, it's nice to have a chance to move on to something else. At the same time, it's also nice to be able to come back to it. Fortunately, because we're a part of Sony and Sony owns the IP of Resistance, we will always have that opportunity to revisit it. If it works out again, as a fan, I'm going to be pretty excited. So obviously, he can't say whether or not it's something that Sony's going to greenlight or something that Insomniac's going to work on. He's retiring, and even if there were plans for that, he's not just going to casually reveal that here. But yeah, it's a shame that Resistance 4 never happened. I think a lot of people don't realize how kind of poorly the last Resistance game sold. People talk about their passion for this series, understandably, and they talk about how excited they are for it and how much they would love for it to come back, but they also kind of overlook the reality that the game didn't sell that well. Like, each game sold worse than the last, and Resistance 3 really did struggle. So you could kind of understand why Sony maybe was like, maybe we should just move on to something new here. But who knows, in the future, maybe something like a Resistance 4 could be absolutely awesome, right? And absolutely needed, maybe the perfect time for something like Resistance 4 to come back. But there you go. Again, this happened back in like 2012. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. If you did, be sure to leave it a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.